back to another MGE Table Talk. I greatly appreciate y'all tuning in, whether you listening on Apple Podcast Network, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at. If you're watching it on YouTube, greatly appreciate that, because like I always say, you really could have been doing anything else with your time, but you chose to be here, so greatly appreciate it. So if you notice too, we in a different background. We're actually filming in the MGE studios. Normally we're filming in Upstage Theater, but we switched it up a little bit. We filming in the MGE studios today, trying out something different. But I am very excited to introduce my new guest today. He does a lot of work in the community. Anyone who knows this man's resume knows that he has been front lines on a lot of different things, whether it be just cases or any kind of injustice. The man is always there. So it is a very, very great honor to have Mr. Eugene Collins sitting here with us. How you doing, man?
Man, I appreciate it, bro. Man, love the show, man. I've always kind of watched your work, man. Even before I knew you, I always looked at it and admired it from a distance. So, man, it's always good to be here and sitting with you. So, I always tell folks I watch the good ones, right?
Oh,
one
man,
of the good ones I watch.
I'm in good company. I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah, I watch the good ones.
Okay. So, like I said, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time out for even being here. Like I said, I know you got a lot of fires in there. I know you got a lot of places to be. People always calling you in to try to help. But a lot of people know you from your work with NAACP. Mm-hmm. Now, you currently are back with them in a different capacity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So currently I'm back with the Baton Rouge branch, assisting in organizing, right? Rebecca Perloff, who was the current president, was somebody, I brought in, right? Many years ago at this point. And she reached out and said, hey, big brother, I need you to come back over and help me with this thing. And I honestly was done with that phase of my life, right? But Rebecca was probably the one person that could have called and I wouldn't have told no, right? Anybody else probably would have got a no. But, it was one of those things where it was just good timing, and I want to see the sister who's doing a phenomenal job. If you really look at what she's doing in NAACP and how she's getting back on track, it's probably one of the better jobs I've seen as president, right? And this is coming from a past president.
Exactly, because you had that title for quite some time.
A while, and the job she's doing with what she has in the moment is just phenomenal, right? And I hope people at some point stop and realize that. Right. But when she basically put out this rally for the troops to come back home, and that's like the folks she came through with, the folks that was there when she got there, a lot of us decided that we were going to go back and just help the brand, right? Because with the NAACP, I always tell folks I never wanted to be president.
I've heard you say that numerous times.
Never, man. I was... my background is sociology and investigations and communications. So I was always the guy that was going to find the information, put together the press releases and all that good stuff, tell you what's going on, and give that to the people that wanted to be in front of the camera, right? I would say at some point, the message got off key, right? So I started stepping out a little bit more to make sure the message that I saw was consistent. But man, that was never a role I wanted to take because I don't consider myself very social. Now, I guess in some ways, some folks might even call me weird.
I think I get tagged with the same label at times.
You understand, right?
Right.
So, man, I never wanted to be in that front-facing role. I just kind of got put there. And I guess that would probably been a little bit pre-Alton Sterling, and then we rolled into Alton Sterling. And then the president of the NAACP at the time just came in and stepped down one day. And they were like, okay, you're going to be the president. I'm like, I don't know about that. I kind of like what I'm doing now.
Right.
And they were like, nah, this is what you're going to do, right? So that's kind of how I ended up in that role and stayed there a long time. And folks will often call that the height of your career, right? The big moment in your career. I didn't see it as that way. Honestly, I got a lot more done when nobody knew me. Because, you can step into a neighborhood and find out information and don't have anybody there waving, that's Eugene,
Right.
But when you get into that space, it actually makes it a lot tougher for you to go out and do the things that made me special.
Right, because your profile is kind of more public, it's out there, so you can't really maneuver how you're used to being able to maneuver.
Yeah, you can't sit in the back of the room and hope nobody notice you. People gonna know you in the room.
They gonna know you.
Yeah, so it makes everything that I felt important more difficult. And being in this role now, serving President Perloff, it's exactly where I always wanted to be.
Right.
I never wanted to be that guy that was gonna go to all the funerals or the birthday parties and stuff like that. I'm a guy that's not very social. You won't see me at the parties. You won't see me at the nightclubs. I typically skip that stuff or get those tickets away, right? But being in that leadership role, you kind of need to do some of those things.
Correct.
And that was never my thing. So President Perloff is suited and built for this role. So I'm excited to see about what she's going to do.
So you're back in more like an investigative role, or
whatever she asks, right?
okay. So you kind of what's the saying? You serve at the pleasure of the president.
At the pleasure of the president. When she called me and said, Eugene, I need this done. I need you to work on this. That's what I'm gonna do. Over the years, you know this. I've developed a knack for poking my nose and going find out what happened.
Right.
So that's something I do enjoy doing. But in the NAACP, it's not the '60s. So you don't have big funders just sitting around just sending money all the time, right?
Right.
So whether you need to write the press release, whether you need to go get the paper, whether you need to sweep, whether you need to wipe the tables down before the meeting, that's what you got to do to make an effort successful. So there's a lot of different things in the organization. And, I often tell folks I grew up here, right? And when you look at that comes with a host of things, and a host of things you just got to learn how to do.
Right. Okay. Now, you mentioned it's not the 60s. Mm-mm. You don't have, big donors just kind of just pouring money in. And when you said that, it kind of made me think of a thought that I've had. And I have conversations with friends all the time, and I always talk about how we have to shift our playbook. So even recently, so we had the whole thing with redistricting, legislation maps and everything. And I noticed that it was a lot of protests downtown and everything, right? Down around the Capitol. And for me, I'm big on, okay, how effective is this going to be? Mm-hmm. Now, in the press, it plays well. We're getting the word and everything out. But those protests wasn't changing none of them people's minds on the other side of that desk. Right or wrong?
Oh, you're right? But it's a couple different things there, right? There's several different nuances when you look at that. One, the protests were too late, right?
Right. The minds were already made up.
It was already made up, but in 2021, right, I filed an ethics complaint while I was still president of the NAACP. I filed an ethics complaint based on an organization that was floating dark money for mapping, right? And we dropped this report off to everybody. We put it with the news outlets. Some people ran stories on it, but nobody did anything about it, right? In 2026, I watched this same company basically help finish this deal, right?
Right.
And when I think about it, it really pissed me off, right? Because I had alerted people that this was going on in 2021. That was the time to march, right? So in 2026, it was too late.
Right.
But in 2021, if we had actually got in front of it when we noticed it, and these are things that you could Google NAACP dark money ethics complaint, and it'll pop up first Google search.
So what was the disconnect with getting the word and getting more people angry about it? You said you had all the hard evidence right there. You distributed to the news. Maybe every news outlet didn't publish it, but what was the disconnect with that? And I know now, in the era that we're in now, we are seeing a rise of more independent journalists. 2021, I know we didn't really see that much of that, or it was kind of at the infancy stages, I believe. But what, in your opinion, what was the disconnect?
In 2021?
Yeah.
Nobody saw me as a competent investigator yet. I mean, when you look at 2021, if you really go back to that, that's when folks just started to get to know Eugene Collins, right?
Right.
In 2022, when I started popping up with all this evidence in the Ronald Green case, that's when people stopped and like, well, man, who is this dude?
Right.
So then people started digging into what I had touched over the years, right? But before then, when I just bring somebody a report that says I found dark money, most of them just thought I was nuts. Now they're going to stop and listen. Mm-hmm. But in 2021, that wasn't the case quite yet. So it was just about who was bringing the information at the time.
It was the messenger, not the message.
Oh, for sure. But even that's my fault, right? Mm-hmm. Because honestly, today, I understand that I don't need to be the messenger on everything that I find, right? So when I find some stuff, I might come give it to you because guess what? That crowd might listen to you where they don't listen to me.
They might get pissed off at me. I ain't gonna.
They might have said her, right? but honestly, today I can recognize that in 2021 I hadn't quite learned that yet. So I thought I needed to hold on to it and bring it to the people, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas it probably needed to be me giving it to an elected official that I trusted to bring the information to the forefront, and it was just a matter of the messenger, in my opinion. And that's something, we got to learn as a people, too. Sometimes it don't need to be us. We can be the person behind the scenes, mm-hmm. really getting it done. But at the end of the day, we might need to send somebody else out there to really be the messenger, somebody more palatable.
Right.
Somebody that people will actually stop and listen to in that moment, right? And sometimes that's not us. If we look at the civil rights movement, because you brought that up, right?
Right.
We look at Dr. King leading the march, but a lot of that stuff was organized by A. Philip Randolph.
Right.
But A. Philip wasn't the messenger for a lot of different reasons, and I know that's a whole different show, right? But he wasn't the right messenger. Dr. King was.
Right.
But A. Philip was probably the architect of that movement, but he did need to be the face. And those are some things that's sometimes hard to admit, but we have to admit it if we want to be successful at this. But getting back to your original point, in 2026, the first nuance is that it was just too late. The second nuance in that is that protesting in itself is an art, right? Dr. King talked about the art of protest. Whereas if you look at protest was always used as almost a leverage or a smokescreen, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it worked in conjunction. It was a dance because, so if we're talking about, during the civil rights era, part of that was embarrassing America on the world stage. While America was having all these different global initiatives where mm-hmm. they're talking about democracy and this, that, and the third, but then at home, you're disenfranchising your own citizens. Mm-hmm. So Dr. King knew how to call the press in and make sure you get shots of this. Mm-hmm. So it was a component. But it was also disruptive. When they're doing sit-ins, they're disrupting the commerce of a business. I guess my biggest thing is that I'm seeing more and more protests, and they're almost to the point where it's just more symbolic than anything. And for me, I'm in the zone of let's get some results. The symbolism of it, cool, whatever. But what's going to change if we do this? So are we going to actually disrupt the system? So if we're not interrupting what they care about, why are we out here protesting? If they already got their minds made up about these maps, and like you said, at that mm-hmm. point it was too late. You had done the work that could have maybe helped expose that, but we can't replay that. Mm-hmm. So right here in 2026, when they're doing this, I'm watching and I'm like, what's the purpose of this? We're going to go down mm-hmm. to the state capitol, and we're going to stay there until 4 o'clock in the morning. For what? They already got the maps drawn. These people that we're trying to appeal to, they've already made up their minds. We can sit up there and tell them the history about this, that, and the third, and all it does, for me, in my opinion, it's not Eugene's opinion, this is my opinion, that we're giving the news a good soundbite, but we're not getting anything out of it. So I have an issue with that where people are always calling for, we're going to protest, we're going to march. Cool, but it feels like it's more so symbolic. And even when to the point where the opposition that you're marching against comes out and says, oh yeah, we welcome peaceful protest. Everyone has a right to voice their opinion. They don't even take it serious anymore because it's not doing anything to them.
And you say that's not my opinion, right? You'll probably be surprised how much I agree with you, right? I used to often tell people, like, man, if you see Eugene Collins marching, I already lost, right? Like, that's my signal to y'all that I need some help. But when you look at protests in 2026, this doesn't include everybody, right? Because some people, I think, are doing it the right way. But what I see in the grand scope of things, just being honest, and I was trained by, Reverend Mary Moody, and Follow Joe Pastor, right? Mm-hmm. So I understand how these things used to take place. But when I look at it in 2026, overall, I'm embarrassed, right? To know that in some way I contribute to this state, right? Because when we look at protests and the art of protest, I use for this for an example, right? It was Ronald Green, working on Ronald Green. We had a rally on the Capitol steps, made the front cover, big news. All these national activists came from around the country and stuff like that. We stood on the steps, we marched to the governor's mansion, and, it was a phenomenal way for people to have their voices heard. Right. But if you ask me, Eugene, what came from that protest, I can't tell you anything. But what I can tell you is that while we were on the steps protesting, we had 3 or 4 people in the Capitol working. So the protest was the visual, but the work was happening inside.
So it was working in conjunction.
It was working in conjunction.
Right. Which, again, I have no problem with that if it's going to work in conjunction with something.
But sometimes, and this is why I push back on it being conjunction, right? Because sometimes, like, I would see something happening, and I would just plan the pressure from the front just to give them some clearance, right? Mm-hmm. And I would often call those folks and tell them, like, hey, just blame me. Tell them Eugene did it. And then y'all go in the back and work. So you giving somebody coverage. You're giving them an umbrella to go in there and do work that sometimes, just being honest, man, these people, sometimes they're a little afraid to do. Mm-hmm. So if I can be on the front steps making noise and attract some of the bullets to me, right, so that they can sneak in the back and get some work done, even though we didn't plan that together, the protest was still effective. If you have a protest with one arm, you're just taking pictures and doing videos. If you can't plan a protest with 2 arms, you shouldn't protest. That's right. Just what it is, right? And I think about something with the bus system, right? And we were protesting one of those cases, and this is really effective. We studied the bus routes, and we looked at what bus routes we could shut down to affect commerce. Right. And we found 5 or 6 bus routes that if we shut down, it was going to drag back traffic, and it was going to shut down some money that day, right? The leader of the bus company, who him and I later actually ended up becoming friends, he got so mad, he basically cussed me out in front of my mama because he didn't realize my mama was driving.
Wait a minute.
My mama worked for the bus company, so he didn't realize that.
That's just uberly disrespectful. Like you said, he didn't know, but still, like, hey, you got cussed out from my mama too?
From my mama, right? But that let me know it was working because my mama came back, boy, he said this, but that let me know it was working, that we were hitting the right spots. Right. But even at the same time that we were disrupting commerce, we had some folks in town hall actually working on some things, right? Mm-hmm. So I think people saw the protest, but they never saw the organization. Right. And they never saw the organizing that happened around the protest. So they saw the sexy part, but they never got the conversations and the negotiations that took place before you saw all of that. Because when you're looking at a civil rights fight, the first thing you want to do is pick up the phone and call that person and say, hey, is this something we can work out? Hey, this guy got tased for 15 minutes and you know you're not supposed to do that, right? Can we sit down and have a conversation about that, view the video? Can I bring the family in to talk to you? You want to first try to work it out. If you can't work it out, then you want to put some stuff in writing and file complaints, right? You want to file your public information requests and all of that good stuff. And then you want to circle back and see if you can work it out, right? Right. And then after that, you want to go above all the head and talk to the top person. If it's the state, you want to try to set up a meeting with the governor. If it's city, you want to try to set up a meeting with the mayor. If it's a particular council district, you want to meet with that council person to see if you can get to a solution, right? Right. Once all of that break down, that's when you're looking at more aggressive forms of advocacy and activism to get towards a goal. But what we see today is not really in the vehicle that you're supposed to see it. So when, like you said, Eugene was on the front line. Yeah, but there were a lot of people that were circling behind me in rooms making things happen.
Which again, and that's the part that I'm highlighting is that there's strategy there.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm seeing more and more just symbolism, where there's no strategy behind some of these things that are going on. It's literally just, what do we do?
But even that, I don't blame them, because that's not their fault. That's the fault of a Eugene Collins. That's the fault of a Gary Chambers, right? That's the fault of a Walter Gino McLaughlin, because we were so secretive about the organizing part of it, right?
Right.
So we showed people the sexy part. We showed people the marching. We didn't really show them that we were competent professionals, and we were sitting down in rooms actually negotiating while the protests were happening, because we were using the protests as a leverage. Like, hey, either you're going to give us this, or these folks going to be in your office tomorrow with this coffee sitting outside, right? Mm-hmm. One of the greatest examples was with the AG protest, and there was a bunch of us down there. Soteria Tate, Quayla Chambers, Aaron Banks, and some other folks. Bradley Brown was there as well. And we occupied that building during lunchtime for 36 days. The longest occupation of a governmental building in the history of our country. Most people don't realize that. Right here in Baton Rouge, a group of 21 individuals kept that going for 36 days. What came out of that is your first piece of legislation at the state level for body cams. Mm-hmm. But we sat there and waited on a meeting with the AG, who was Governor Jeff Landry at the time. And we got that meeting. And when we got that meeting, we said, hey, these are the things we want. He said, hey, I can't do that, but I can do this. So body cams actually originally came from that piece of legislation that was pushed by the then AG at that time, Governor Landry, right? Mm-hmm. Who was then AG Landry. So it has to be some strategy attached to the action. But I actually 100% agree with you that what I see now is all action, no strategy. And that's problematic. And that's something we got to work past, as well as, call it out, but call it out in a way that we can actually try to see if those people want to be taught.
Right.
Now, some of these people just don't want to be taught. Let me just be honest.
There are quite a few. There are quite a few.
It's quite a few of them. But it's the one or two people that might be good in that mix, right?
Right.
That you want to try to get to. So whenever I see it, I always tap them on the shoulders like, hey, man, let's have lunch. Like, let's go sit down and, have dinner one day or something like that to see if they're teachable, if they're coachable, if they want to learn how to do it correctly. But they call back and be like, man, look, I got 4,000 people coming down there next week, and that's the largest crowd. That's more than you ever got, Eugene. I leave them alone. That's somebody that just wants that show, right?
Right.
But I do try to reach out to them first and see if they're interested in learning all the aspects of how you do the protest or the art of the protest. So I don't think protesting is ineffective. What I do think is that we haven't done it right. And the strategy part of it is just often left out, right? You're not going to change nothing with a social media post. The awareness can help, right, but it has to be other work that goes along with it, right? Like there's some very vocal people on social media, right? If they jump out and talk on an issue and they get good traction, I'm immediately calling somebody trying to set up a meeting like, man, they wearing your ass out on social media. Right. I'm using that as leverage to get some of the things that are good for the folks that we serve. But doing it standalone, it'll never work that way. It has to be a part of a greater ecosystem. Like I think about right now with the the boycott, right? Mm-hmm. It's really good. So if you out there and you like the protest, if I'm planning an organic protest and I really want to help something as a larger strategy, I'm protesting at McDonald's.
Right.
To try to connect with this effort, right? To try to help leverage this effort. If I can keep 20 or 30 people that would normally go to McDonald's, if they see people out there protesting on the sidewalks, they're gonna skip McDonald's that day. That helps the boycott effort, right?
Right.
So if I'm still out there in that mode, that's what I'm thinking. I ain't in that mode no more. I'm a little older now, you know what I'm saying? A little harder for me to run from the police these days, right? But if I'm still in that mode, that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
I'm not thinking, let's go plan a march downtown. I'm like, nah, there's an action going on right now around boycotting McDonald's. So if I'm protesting at McDonald's right now. But that's not the sense right now. Everybody's kind of, in my opinion, moving disjointly. There's this going on over here. There's this going on over here. That over there. But nobody sat down and said, hey, how can we all support one another and mesh together? Because, Terrence, you and I, right? Mm-hmm. We have often disagreed, but there's a healthy respect there for each other, right?
Absolutely.
So you've never called me and asked me for something I didn't say yeah, and I've never called you and asked you for something you didn't say yeah, because even if we don't always agree, there's a healthy respect there for what each other does. I don't see that respect right now, right?
I've always been the person that I don't care who takes the game-winning shot.
Yeah.
Did we win? Mm-hmm. It's not about the glory or give me my credit, but you are absolutely correct. A lot of things are just splintered at this moment. In your opinion, and you might not even giving this that much thought. I'm just kind of putting you on the spot, but who is a figure that you feel like could maybe be a center of gravity to kind of help unsplinter these? You got all these different efforts out. You got all these different people who are kind of making waves over here, over there. But who can kind of say, look, let's get together and make a collective effort? Because I think, that's the component that is missing. You have a lot of people who want to do something. I said, even me, I've said, hey, I think, protesting without strategy is just completely ineffective. And you've said, okay, but this can work in conjunction with that. In the back room over here while I was doing this, they were working here. Like you said, a lot of people don't see the other side of that. And people are results driven. Mm-hmm. So when, especially in a time like now where there's so much going on, we're getting hit over the head, just bombarded. I'm saying metaphorically, but physically too. Yeah. And it seems like it's just like they got all the Infinity Stones and we ain't got no way of getting that gauntlet. People are frustrated and they want to see the results. So I'm asking too, like, is there someone in your mind that's like, okay, I think if this person can be the nucleus and pull all these other factors together, then we can get a collective effort going?
I don't think it's any one individual, but I do think it's the church. And if you look historically, these movements have always been led through the church, right? And it's a reason for that, right? Mm-hmm. But I do think the church probably needs to be that vehicle to kind of pull people together. But in 2026, I don't think you're going to see that centralized figure anymore. One, our culture's too divided, right? We hate on each other way too much to let one grow too big, right?
Get back down here.
Yeah. Brother, let me tell you, I train most of my enemies, right? Like, that's just the reality. That's right. What you're working with. And if you ever get too much of that power, you're going to have people start to shoot little darts at you to poke away, right? And what they can't find in your business, they're going to try to find in your personal life. So what I've witnessed over the last 15 years, I've seen some people get close to that. But I've always seen the system autocorrect and say, nah, we ain't gonna let this Negro get that. Nah, he can't get that, right? Or we're gonna make sure he don't have resources. Or, like my good friend Sippy Slim used to always say, they're gonna cut your water off, right? They're gonna make it hard for you to make money. You still gotta make money to make a living, right? Passion don't pay the bills. And I got a 14-year-old daughter that likes nice things and told me she wants a Jeep just like daddy, right?
She's 14, so yeah, she at that age too.
I gotta get it at some point, right?
Right.
So when you look at all those things, I often see people get derailed before they get to that level. The last person I can think about that had the ability just to stop everybody and pull everybody into the room and say, hey, this is what we're going to do was the Joe Delpit. But that centralized figure, this system has attacked that, right? And I'm not even sure you want to be that figure anymore, right? Because when you stand out in front of an organization or a movement, you are an extreme target. Your life has to change drastically, right? I think about the height of some of the battles that we're engaged in within NAACP, where I was a very visible presence for those fights, right?
And I know you became a target.
In every aspect of the way, right? You can do nothing wrong because your boo, your wife, your girlfriend, your spoogie, whatever you want to call that person, they getting the package in the mail, right? They
become a target too.
They getting phone calls at 3, 4 in the morning. So normal stuff that normal people might do, you can't do, right? because everybody gonna know about it if you do it. And then the very people that you find close to you, they gonna spread the rumors. And if you get outside of that, the next thing they're gonna do is they're gonna label you either crazy, they're gonna label you militant, they're gonna label you resistant, or they're gonna give you the label of activist, right? And an activist mean I can't do nothing but talk. I can't write, I'm not a professional, I can't work, I can't do nothing but talk. So then they're gonna give you that label, and that's all about attacking your income, right? So then they're gonna attack your income. So where you used to have $150,000, $200,000 a year coming in, now you're struggling to scrape 60 or 70, right? And they really get to you really just trying to get to 40 or 50 at a point, right? Then you're on the road all the time. So just that the social things of my daughter, right, who can sing beautifully. Like I went to one of our programs. This was after I had stepped out of the role of president, and it was the first time I had time to like go to one of our programs. I'm like, when did Malia start singing? You know, but I didn't have time to know those things.
Right,
so you're giving up that social aspect. So you have the external pressure, but then you have the internal pressure of my dad calling me, man, when the last time you took your boy to the baseball field and just caught balls with him?
Yeah,
you
got something that, you know, most people just take for granted. But
I'm at the funeral on Saturday, right? And they got a birthday party, and all my members, if you make the funeral and you made Lil Joe birthday party, you better be a Lil John birthday party, right? So
can't be slighting us now.
It's a hard thing to maintain that leadership space where you can say, well, I can put all of these people in a room and get them in the same vehicle in the same way. Because the other thing that's going to happen as these people have proximity to you, guess what they're going to do? They're going to grow. And eventually, what do they want? Their own team and their own lanes, right? It ain't the 60s. So when they want their own team and their own lanes, they're going to try to start doing, most of them are going to start doing their own things, and you wish them well, right? You want them to do that. I often would tell the talented folks that worked around me, like, hey, one day I'm going to be working for you. You know, and literally, with Rebecca Perloff, I'm working for her, right? And I told her that. Like, I'm going to be working for you. This is going to be your job. But when you look at that central figure, I don't think it exists for a lot of different reasons. And, you know, as black folk, too, man, sometimes we just can't leave. You know, like, you know this, and you're a married man, right? Like, it's like being in a relationship that, hey, you know it's over, you ain't really happy no more, but ain't nobody did nobody nothing, right?
So
like, you want something different, I want something different, right? But to our friends, we got to make them seem something happen, right? Terrence a no good dog. Terrence ain't done that. Terrence ain't done that. And too many times do people in this town that don't work with you want to leave and say bad things. So even that hurts your mantle of growing to that space, because what happens is people might believe that because this person been close, right? So they might believe that because this person been close, when this person really just hating, because black folks, we see that as that this person got to decrease in order for me to get here, right? Not that, hey, if we all here, if we all dogs, if we all lions.
I don't know how to impart that mentality. Like, I have the same mentality. So the same thing you just described, everyone on my team, I always tell them, like, hey, look, you know, what is your dream? Let's work towards that as well, too. I don't want somebody to just be up under me for the rest of their life. That doesn't serve anybody.
Doesn't help nobody.
But if we all can get to this point, whether it be financially or whatever it is, then that's when we become more powerful. So if we can't have that centralized figure, then can someone pull a soul food and invite everybody to a Sunday dinner that need to be there? You know how Ahmad did, and he went and told everybody, look, I found Big Mama's money, and everybody ended up at a Sunday dinner. Like, and I'm saying that in jest, but in the same sense.
Yo, man, lie to you, I'm gonna tell you the truth.
Is there a way where, even if it's not a centralized figure, maybe we can try to create some form of like a commission or a board where you have these other entities that they come in, but okay, we're going to collectively work towards this goal. No one's commandeering anyone else. No one is bigger than anyone else, but this is the goal that we're working on now. So we need to form like Voltron, knock out this enemy. Okay, everybody is like the end of Ocean's 11. They finish the heist, they watch the fireworks, and then they kind of part ways until it's Ocean's 12. And then until it's time for us to kind of meet again, we go our separate ways. But for right now, this is what we're working on. Is there a reality that exists?
See, you gave a great example, right, with Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12, right? Because in that example, the first thing you have to be is a professional. Like just being honest, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you say, most people remember me from the NAACP, but, I was appointed in the state government for 11 years, right? Mm-hmm. And if you've ever worked in the state government or on any political levels, the first thing you understand is, like, that's a very harsh environment. Like, we talk to each other harshly. We are very blunt. Mm-hmm. Like, you leave every day like wanting to fight somebody. But
it almost sounds like the media world, because
it's just like it.
If you've been in the newsroom, they will talk to you very harsh, especially if it's 2 minutes to 5 and you ain't got your story together. And, it's very harsh.
It's not for thin-skinned folks, right?
Right.
But I will tell you, coming from that environment where that's just part of the culture, and everybody understand, look, man, you got a job to do. It ain't my job to talk nice to you. Like, we all got to function here, right? And when we get off, when the shift over, whatever it is, we're going to go home with our families, the friend circles outside of this, and we'll be back tomorrow and be at it, right? But we got a high-level function and a high-level job, and we got to complete these things, right? But when you get back to the lay culture, man, they don't always understand that. So when you look at that professionalism culture, sometimes it's just not there, right? So it can't exist on that level. But what you're talking about is unity, right?
Right.
And
like, in what world does that exist for us?
So I think it exists, right? But just like civil rights, right? We'll look at Dr. King and we'll look at Malcolm and say, oh, they were way apart.
No,
they weren't.
They really weren't miles apart.
They weren't. They weren't miles apart. And if you actually talk to some of the folks that were around them, right, they often played off of one another.
They did.
Now they believed different things religiously. They lived their life differently, right? Because if you want to talk about who was the most moral figure there, it was Malcolm. It was actually Malcolm, right? Malcolm was,
and that comes from, FBI transcripts, them spying on him saying, "Oh man, he's a saint."
We all know this to be the case factually, right? But those two men played off of each other, and they watched each other, and they were unified in the work, even though socially they may have not ever meshed, right?
And I did read toward the end of both their lives, they
started meeting each other in the center,
right?
Yeah.
Which that would have been.
I believe that's why they got killed.
I believe so too. I think they were coming together a little bit too close, and like whoa. And I mean, and we've heard the stories about how in X-Men, Dr. King, they patterned Professor X after Dr. King, and Magneto was patterned after Malcolm X. Which if you look at them, you can like, yeah, I could kind of see that. But imagine even in the comics, if those two were together, because if you think about it, they wanted the same thing as well too. So the same thing Dr. King wanted is the same thing that Malcolm X wanted. And with those two, if they would have actually then, like you said, they played off of each other, but what if and it was kind of a covert thing.
Yeah, it was.
But what if it was overt?
I think that they got killed fast. I mean, just being honest with you, right? I think the way they did it was how it needed to be done.
Right.
When we look at some of the great fights that Dr. King took on, and I'll give you one, for example. It was Emmett Till, right? We always assumed that was Dr. King's fight, right? That was Medgar Evers' fight.
Yeah.
Medgar Evers actually investigated that case. He was the field secretary for the NAACP. He was an old military guy, so he was chasing guys down for information and putting guns to their head and saying, "Hey, this
I need this."
Yeah, that was Medgar, right? Medgar was a different beast, but he wasn't a great orator. So they brought Dr. King in to tell the story of what Medgar was doing, right? And that was how it worked. But you won't find Medgar and Martin in too many spaces together. But when you look at that, unity has always existed in some form in the work. But it didn't mean that y'all had to just be together, right?
Correct.
And I think that's what we're looking at, because you brought up a great point. What if they had came together? What if they had Voltron, right? Mm-hmm. And even though my opinion of that is the government would have got them faster, right?
Right.
But if they had done that, yeah, it would have been a powerful thing. But when you look at what Malcolm was doing, right? What Malcolm was doing was kind of against nation teachings, because.
Yeah.
If I was a part of the nation. So when you look at the nation, they ain't out there protesting. They talking about do for self, right? Economic opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. Build your business, right? Grow your food. Prepare to live in a society that's just us, right? And a self-sustaining society. That's the thought. So when Malcolm came along with this political talk, that wasn't necessarily accepted totally in the nation, right? As we see, right?
Right. But it was received by members because
it was received
he started to grow in popularity with them, mm-hmm. and not to his vanity or anything. He was just speaking on what he was speaking on.
Yeah, he definitely did that. But and on Dr. King's side of things, when you look at what he was doing, you had the Big Six, right? Mm-hmm. The Big Six. The Big Six came out and said Dr. King was stealing money. So they were both dealing with challenges from their own side
internally
that made it unique, right? And that's what started bringing them together. It wasn't them just...
Yeah, it was that shared experience.
Both sides were kind of being pushed together because they were both being pushed out.
Right.
Like we talk about the NAACP, an organization that I love, right? But the NAACP forced its founder out, W.B. Du Bois. Said, "Nah, you too radical. You got to go." Yeah. And those are things that throughout history that has happened that just brought people together. I don't think that we've had those historical elements happen to individuals that pushed them together. Because ain't nobody in history just came together willingly. And if you want to go back even farther than that, right? You go back to W.B. Du Bois, and you go back to Booker T, right? Booker T was like, "Hey, man, look, y'all can go follow W.B. Du Bois down there in the South and let them white folks crack your head if you want to. Mm-hmm. Or you can come up here and just get real good at your job and buy your house and get your own neighborhood, and then you ain't got to deal with them, When the answer was really probably somewhere in between what Booker was saying, what W.B. Du Bois was saying, right?
Right.
And even though W.B. Du Bois is sometimes looked at as the black bourgeoisie or the father of the black bourgeoisie, because we talk about the talented 10th, mm-hmm. When in essence all he was saying is like, hey, 10% of these Negroes are really good, so they gonna take care of the other 90%. Right. Which ain't much different than what we see today, right?
No, it's not.
So that's all he was saying. But when we look at the folks who were considered like these extreme, centralized, Afrocentric, black power folks, that ain't usually W.B. Du Bois. But W.B. retired and died in Africa. The rest of them died in England somewhere, right? Right. So when we see the thought process of their maturation and where they ended up, they actually ended up like damn near on top of each other, and sometimes like that, right?
Yeah.
So unity, for me, it ain't always being on top of one another. Sometimes it's just working in the same ecosystem and respecting that space and assisting when I can, right?
But and just to kind of push back slightly on that,
okay.
and not even in a combative tone, mm-hmm. but wouldn't it even be more effective if we're going to be operating in these different spaces, but let's get each other in on the plan of that. Mm-hmm. I'm saying as far as just at least, can we get everybody in a room and say, listen, I understand we ain't got to be working in close connection with each other, but let's at least go forth with an understanding of, okay, you're handling this, you're going to be handling that, and I'm going to assist you when you need help with this. If you need help from me, call me. If I need help from you, this is what we're going to do. So at least, mm-hmm. it feels splintered because people don't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like, am I off base?
Nah, man, you ain't even pushing back. You're right. Man, just being honest, man, if you tried to bring that meeting together, you're going to need security. because there's a lot of things that's happened over the years that's just never been put to bed. And there's some folks that we absolutely need working together that's already sharing the space. But man, you come in the rooms and they ain't speaking to one another. They ain't trying to be in each other's company because there's a lot of history around what has happened, right?
But speaking of history, I understand personal histories. But we've all studied history, meaning that it's bigger than you, it's bigger than me. And we're in a space now to where we got to push these personal grievances to the side because in one fell swoop, I mean, it's only been a couple of years and we see work basically being erased. We see work, blood, sweat, and tears that people have put in are now being erased just like it never happened. And it's because I feel like we haven't been I think we achieved a few things individually, and then we forgot that there's a whole system out there that we got to still counter. And we got comfortable with the few wins that we did get, but those are independent metrics. So it's like, I'll say this. We're like LeBron right now. Stats, but that's individual. Greatness comes from rings. We have taken our eye off the goal of the goal of playing this game is to get the ring, not for individual stats. And I think we got into this mode of where we're happy getting these stats. This one person can hang their hat and say, I achieved this. But collectively, we haven't moved the needle. Yeah, so, like, again, am I off base with that analogy?
Man, honestly, I agree with you, right? We hadn't changed enough. We ain't won enough. I tell people that all the time, like, we ain't won enough. You know, if I'm engaged in something, man, if I'm leading some form of movement, or I'm leading some effort, if I lose, I'm going to tell you, man, I lost. We tried, we failed. That's just what it is.
Right.
But when you look at that, when you talk about the rings, the championship, one reason I believe that we're not getting there because we've mistaken community and advocacy with consultants. And when I say that, I ain't saying it's a bad thing. Go make your money.
Right.
But when we started looking at what we call social entrepreneurship, right? So people are making money based on their standing in the community.
Yeah.
So, you know, it may not always financially benefit me to be aligned with this person. And they may be doing great work, but I can't be aligned with this person because my check come up from over here, and this person ain't aligned with that person, and the check that I got come over here, even though they're black faces, coming from some white boy, right? So, like, even though I'm giving the appearance of being in this movement, I'm really just a tool of white supremacy. So who do we invite into these rooms? Because I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. There's a lot of rooms that I go into. As soon as I walk in, I'll make a loop. I grab a Coke and I walk out. I'm like, y'all got too many ops up in here. I know this motherfucker working with crackers, right? Like so,
right.
Like y'all might not know, but you are gonna find out. But I'm gonna excuse myself.
I have my
out.
Suspicions of quite a few people.
And I know, right? my background is investigation.
He said, you got your suspicions. I got the facts.
Yeah, like so. There's a lot of times and then you just can't go to somebody and be like, look, man, watch him, like, cause then you're hating. You know what I'm saying? So I just remove myself. But when you look at that, I think sometimes what we're looking at as advocacy is really consulting. This person is here consulting, so I don't want to be in a room with this consultant,
right?
Because this consultant is going to go to this room and that room and that room looking for a check, right? That's why one thing I've never did and I never wanted to do, and even to this day when people call me, I say no. I never wanted to make money as a part of my advocacy. I'll go work a job.
Well, I think it's completely antithetical.
Exactly, because when you step into a room, let's say I'm meeting with the mayor, right? And I'm asking for police reform. The moment that he give me a check, I can't get no change.
No.
That's just the reality. Now, I'm not talking down on the people that get the check. I'm not doing that. Feed your family.
Right.
But some of us got to step in there for change. Some of us can't step in there and get a check, because the moment you take that check, your ability to get change in certain circles, that's done.
Well, they've purchased it. It's like it's like the trend now, and I've spoke about this with my friends, but I'll speak about it now as well too. In the world of media, you have it now where people are paying for interviews, and I think that is completely almost ruined independent media, because now if you want to ask someone, hey, you want to come on this platform, let's really talk, how much you paying me? Yeah. Well, that's not how it works. I don't remember Larry King paying anybody to come on this show. You're not, but when you start doing that, that's no longer an interview. That is paid programming at that point, because now you've paid for their time. So now they're gonna, what you need me to say now? Oh, you want me to say something outlandish? You want me to you want me to say this? Cool, because you paid for it now. But that's not an interview. So it's the exact same thing, I think.
It basically is, man. It basically is. When you look at the word social entrepreneurship, it does not mean that those people are bad people. No. It does not mean that they're not useful in certain senses.
But we can't brand you in this way now.
Not in this space.
No.
Not in this space. And that's my problem sometimes. People will confuse that social entrepreneurship with true advocacy. Like when you come work with me and you say, Eugene, I want to come help, I want to come work with you, or back in the day, hey, Eugene, I want to join NAACP, the first thing I was telling you, like, man, look, I'm let you know right now, you can make a lot of money up here. Matter of fact, I'm going to cost you a few dollars, right?
So before you do.
Yeah. And I would say, look, when I get a little change, I'm going to bust it up between all of us, but it ain't going to be a lot. like I tell anybody, like you would never hear Eugene say he had big money, nothing like that. Right now, I think these came from Walmart, right?
Hey, Old Navy, baby.
Like I have never bought nothing that I couldn't go and paint a house to pay for, right? Even when things got real bad, my business wasn't doing well. Man, I jumped on my friend's truck and did plumbing, right?
Right.
Because that's what you have to do sometimes to maintain this space of being able to work for the people, right?
Absolutely.
Because the moment you go out there and you start taking money, you compromise yourself. So when you say, how can we get anybody in the room? The first thing we got to have is a real conversation around who's really out here doing advocacy and who just a consultant.
Well, I've said this in the past as well, too. There needs to be a better vetting process. Mm-hmm. You almost got to be like the mob. When the mafia, you can't be inducted as a made man if they haven't they trace you all the way, your lineage.
You can't say that now. They almost got me indicted, right?
But that's the example I'm using. But I'm saying we do need to have a better vetting process. I mean, and again, this is just from history. We bring up Malcolm X. His security was an undercover. He didn't even know about it. Like there was so many informants in both organizations. Dr. King's organization, they had informants, and the Nation of Islam, they had informants like reporting back. Black Panther Party. So just historically, if we like I've seen this movie before. Mm-hmm. Why do we keep playing out these scenes that we've seen before? We got to have a vetting process too,
brother. Because you asked me that, one day when I'm ready to have a conversation, I'm gonna have that conversation with you, right? But when we look at that, man, it's all about upward movement. Mm-hmm. And if you become a symbol, right? A symbol to people, a symbol to government, a symbol to leadership, you become something that the people around you can leverage. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you just need to make sure that you got a short circle around you. But then people start to show you where they're at. They start to get mad about different things, right? Things that don't make no sense, things that's not important, right? It ain't nothing you need to ship. That's just where they're at. They were looking for something,
right?
And they feel like they got it, or they don't feel like they're getting it fast enough, right? So yeah, your hate, your rats. They always gonna be right there around you because hey, can't nobody hurt you unless they're your right or your left hand, right? So those are the folks that you're always listening to, right? The old folks always say the worst kind of talk is pillow talk, because you're not giving stuff away to people that can hurt you unless you love them, right? And the hard part about that is, man, I always think about Reverend Mary Moody, right? Mm. And how she took this young man who was rough around the edges. She Christian, I'm Muslim. Like, she had every reason to say, look, man, you're not cut out for this.
Right.
But she never did. She kept going. So there's a sense in me that I owe that, right? So sometimes I've grabbed the wrong people, and I've held on too long. Mm-hmm. But it's a fine line because you don't want to quit on people, but at the same time, you don't want to compromise the things you work on. And then, like I've told people that I've worked with, and if they're ever honest with you, they'll tell you I said this. I would tell them, don't be like me. Don't take the route I took. It's too hard. It's too difficult. Like, go make some money. Like, don't be going out here trying to finance your daughter's laptop. Have it in the bank account. I've told folks that work with me, like, you don't want this life, right? And I wanted them to go do other things and really go explore and not have it be as difficult as this road has been for me. And if they're honest with you, they're going to tell you I said it, right? Yeah. So I've never looked down upon anybody that decided to do something different or do something differently in any way. Now, they may have said that I did to make themselves feel better, but I never did that, right? And I still call them and check in, still call it the kid's nephew and all of that stuff, right? Still love them, but your work just can't be attached to mine. Your work can't be nowhere around mine because we're on two different wavelengths. But at the same time, when you look at that, you don't want to quit on people, but you do have to vet. Because I can tell you, and the times that I have come under scrutiny or attack, it's always been in-house. Like, folks have always told me white folks didn't like me, but I ain't never had a problem with them. It's always been people my color. Internal. Yeah, it's always been internal, right? And so when you look at that, that's a risk you run. I wish I had an answer to give you, but I don't, because I walk right into it too. But when you look at that, we as a people have to identify, where does success come from, and I really believe that's getting back to neighborhood organizing, not really, the unity of this movement, but actually people that understand their particular block, right? Right. Because when I started in advocacy, it was in an organization that me and my friends came up with. One of my best buds, Kenny Collins, right? Okay. And Kenny Collins, who we call Butt. Butt was a bad tight end too. You throw that joke with a ball, he was like a pinball. Everybody was gonna bump. I'm telling you, bro, he was a bad boy. And Butt, we were best friends, right? Best man at each other's wedding and stuff like that. We never agreed. Even now, he's a Republican, right? Yeah. Like, we never agreed. But when we were growing up, we loved our community, and we founded this organization called PTP, Primetime Players, right? Okay. And we started cleaning vacant lots. That
don't even sound like advocacy, primetime player. That sounds like y'all was hitting the club up.
Man, we were 17, it just sounded cool, right? It sounded cool. But man, like, we literally, like, we work with Reverend Moody, because at the time they were talking about closing Dufrock Elementary. Okay. So we work with Reverend Moody to put flyers on cars and plan a town hall to get people to come into that town hall to try to keep the school open. And Reverend Moody actually got it done, right? And that was, for me, was like, man, I like this. This is what I want to do with my career, right?
It sparked it.
It sparked me. And to this day, we're still carrying that work, right? But I say all that to say is that anything that you see from me is Reverend Moody. It ain't Eugene Collins. This is me carrying on the work that I learned from Reverend Moody. And for me, that's what advocacy is about, not being in a singular scope. Like, when I start something off, it's still the things that she taught me to do. It's still the things that she taught me to put in place. Right. Like, that's still what we do, right? And when you think about things in that vein, there's always a togetherness, because there's 4 or 5 people that kind of point back to her, right? Correct. That I know about.
Branches from the tree.
Branches from the tree. But I will say them old schoolers were different, right? They were like you. Like, if you wiggled a little bit, they put you out. Like whoa.
Hey, you're twitching.
They were different, man. And I tell everybody this story, man. When Reverend Moody was dragging me around with her, and I was training under her for 2-3 years, maybe, man. I had to carry her bags and her boombox. Mm-hmm. And she had the boombox, right? Because Reverend Moody was, people record and stuff like that secretly now. Yeah. Now, Reverend Moody was going to come with some cassette tapes, label it, set it on the table, and press record in front of you. They'd be like, "Are you recording, Reverend Moody?" Like, "Oh, yeah, I'm I mean, if you said it, right? You can say it." like, she ain't hide it. She said the boombox right there and recorded you, right? But for the first 2 or 3 years, man, I would bring Reverend Moody bags. I would go in the room, and she used to meet with Dr. Claiborne and all of those legends and stuff like that. Right. I'd go in the room, and I would set up her stuff. I remember the first time I went with her, I set up a boombox, set up her papers and stuff like that. Then I sat down, like, man, I'm in the room with some legends. Reverend Moody came, baby, what you doing? And I was like, oh, I said, your stuff already together? Oh, no, baby, I left you a chair outside by the door.
That's your place over there.
Bro, for 2 or 3 years, I would bring her to the meeting, and I would bring her stuff, and I would set up, and I had to sit outside.
Right.
Because, man, they hadn't vetted me yet. And it was 2 or 3 years before I got in the room.
Had to make sure.
And then it was another year before I could talk.
We had to make sure.
But I think about that, when I think about that, like it was 4 years before those old folks even let me have a voice. Now we jump out the gate and say, man, look, I want this, and this, and this in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm just starting. Whereas, honestly, man, it was 4 years matriculating there, another probably 16, 17 years at the NAACP before I became president, and probably 20 years overall before anybody took me serious. It was work. Yeah. And because I look at people now, man, they don't want to put in that work, right?
No, they got a microwave mentality.
Microwave mentality.
Don't nobody want to cook no more. Like you gotta let this marinate. You gotta season. You know, let it marinate overnight and then put it in the oven and slow cook. And everybody just want microwave mentality. 2 minutes and we in and out. And to your point, we may need to get back to that whole look. Before you can sit in on this meeting, go sit outside.
With this generation, man, they gonna be outside planning to kill you.
but hey, they gonna have to plan it. They ain't gonna be able to get it off right now. And as sloppy as they think, that plan ain't gonna go over. But I'm saying, I think there needs to be some type of a reset because
it does.
And when I say that, I mean we got to change minds and hearts at this point because we've seen this movie before. And we're, I made a joke with my friends and everything when we hit 2020. I said, oh man, we're in the roaring 20s again. And now 6 years in, I'm like, wait, I didn't mean it like that, but like this is literally the 1920s again. Like we're really in a reset mode, and I don't think mentally a lot of people have caught that this is a complete reset in our society. And we're still living in like it's still 2008. Obama just got elected. It's a feel-good time, and we're getting our cosmetic seat at the table. I don't think people have really grasped the fact that we are in a complete societal reset. And we have to actually acknowledge that.
Well, it goes back to a point that you may mention too earlier, and it wraps up, right? When you think about our great leaders, right, the Dr. Kings of the world, the Malcolm X, and I always talk about Reverend Moody, but Reverend Moody, who was a lifetime educator, lived 2 houses down from me, right? She was a sister of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, right, a finer sister. Reverend Moody, what I often tell folks when I got to college, I told people, when I got there, I was like, hey, I want to be a Zeta. And they was like, man, nah, you can't be no Zeta, man. But man, you can come be a Sigma. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Oh, that's right. That's cool. That's just like this, though, right?
Yeah, but man, I had never saw any other Greek organization in my neighborhood but Zeta,
right?
Because she was the only Greek person in my hood, right?
Right.
So the only thing I knew was Zeta Phi Beta. I still had the little preschool trophy that they gave me, right? And I was kind of disappointed when I found out I couldn't be a Zeta.
Like, I can't play.
But that was it. So I often tell folks I became a Sigma because of a Zeta, right?
Right.
But Reverend Moody was not a rich person, and the cars that I knew that she had got as she got older, somebody gave to her because of the work that she had did. She would call and say, "Hey, I don't have a car," and then somebody would bring her a car, right? When you look at Dr. King, he died broke. You know, Malcolm X died living out of a hotel, and died broke, right? And we often talk about like breaks from the movement. Malcolm spent like weeks and a month dealing with his mental health, right? He only spent 2 or 3 weeks actually working, right? The rest of the time he was actually preparing for what he was walking into. Right. But he died in a hotel away from his family and broke. When we look at the people who were really effective in this work, man, they ain't died with no big bank accounts. They left this earth with barely nothing. And I say that to say that is that we don't have people in this moment willing to sacrifice that. Because everybody, they got their house, they got their car, they got their goals, right? So when it comes to missing out on a check, missing out on this or that, you know, most people don't want to do that. Man, I had some folks call me one time, man, and they asked me to meet with them. And, you know, when you get those certain calls, you already know what it is, right? And I took Lyle Montgomery with me, right? Because Lyle Montgomery is always kind of like my moral compass. If you see Lyle, he, you know, the brother might seem crazy, but he is literally one of the most moral people I've ever been around. Right. He keeps you grounded, right? I say, so I'm going to bring Lyle with me. And I got into this room, and they made a pretty big offer to me, right, to do some stuff. And Lyle is leaning across the table looking at me like, Gene, what you gonna do, bruh? Hey, brother, I mean, you hear the nice white man talking to you, huh? And I remember sitting there, I was like, man, look, I appreciate this, but I'm gonna go ahead and bust out. And we got in the car, Lyle was like, man, I'm so glad you made the right choice, because I love you, Gene. It was gonna sure hurt me not to mess with you no more. But people like that, they keep you towards that center.
Right.
But man, like, this work is supposed to be about sacrifice. It's supposed to be about giving things up. It's supposed to be about putting yourself in a space where people will say, man, you don't want to mess with him, he too militant. Like, man, that's a compliment.
Absolutely.
If I got a coon or a sellout or a racist person in the room saying, we don't need Eugene here because of this, man, that's a compliment.
Badge of honor.
But what that does cause you is opportunity. Yeah. What that does mean is that some rooms you won't be invited to, right?
Which it goes back to what needs to also be built as well too, which is we have to have our own infrastructure. Yeah. We have to create these opportunities. We have to have our network of power. If you look at, you know, our Asian counterparts, we never see, you know, and not to paint a whole entire people with just one broad stroke, but how often do you see them actually protesting about anything?
Oh, never. They got money
because they've created their own little network.
Got an ecosystem.
You know? So that's the other thing in which we shoot ourselves in our foot with that too. We don't support our own businesses. We have businesses. It's not that we don't have entrepreneurial spirit or don't have the entrepreneurial know-how, but we don't support our own. And I think, again, it goes back to not only vetting people who want to do this work, but also making a deliberate effort to say, hey, I need to go support this business because they look like me. Now, I ain't saying just support just for the sake. You still got to do good too. Like, and I think we mistake that as well too. I've run across a couple people where it's like, just support me, I'm black. Yeah, but you ain't doing a good job either. Like, if I got to still do the job with you, then that ain't what I hired you for. But I make it a point, like, if I'm trying to go get juice or whatever else, I'm gonna go holler at the urban bros. You know, it might be a little bit out my way. I'm gonna pass up Big Squeezy, but they got juice, so I'm gonna make a deliberate effort to go and support them, because if we're going to try to feed back into our own ecosystem to where we can say what we want to say unapologetically, we have to also be able to have a financial undergirding under ourselves. The civil rights movement, you got to remember, black entertainers were helping to fund that. When people got locked up, Mahalia Jackson was bailing people out of jail. But we don't have that same mentality and that mindset. So that's why I was saying too, we're in a reset that we have to change minds and hearts to get people on board with that.
Yeah, and you know, man, you bring up a powerful point, right? On a couple different levels, right? Because the first piece you're talking about, you know, is us not supporting our business, and then sometimes our businesses don't be on point, right? The most honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us to stay away from niggerdom, right? Stay away from that, right? Because that's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with challenging your people to be better, right?
Right.
Nothing wrong with that, to say, hey, we need to, I know this against you, but hey, you could have done these things a little better. But one name you brought up there was Mahalia, right? And I often would compare her to Lael. And Mahalia was the person that kept Dr. King in that space, right?
Uh-huh.
If you ever find a really, really good recording of the I Have a Dream speech, right?
You can hear it in the background.
You can hear it. You can hear her say, tell him about the dream, Martin.
Uh-huh.
And the reason she said that is because Dr. King didn't want to give that speech.
No, he was gonna
He
go
was
in a
pivoting.
different. He was pivoting, and she was like, no, that ain't what you told me.
Come back here. Come
Right.
back here. Come back here. And it ended up being one of the greatest speeches in history, right?
Absolutely.
But that wasn't the speech he wanted to get because he didn't think that America was ready for it.
No, he didn't think it would connect.
It wouldn't connect that. Not quite yet, right? And you can hear Mahalia saying, tell him about the dream, Marty.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, when we think about that, that's so important to have those people that can be what I call the moral conscious of the movement. I see a lot of folks that want to be a Dr. King, right? I see a lot of folks that want to be a Malcolm. What we don't have
Well,
is the
they want the glitz of it. They want the status of it.
They want the
But they
status.
don't understand that, like everybody want to have Jordan status, but they don't want to go train like Jordan. Mm-hmm. I read a quote Muhammad Ali was saying, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, he hated training. He hated it. But he would train for 6 months so that way in that hour-long fight he could win. Mm-hmm. But that's what it took for him to be that. I mean, people want to be the greatest like Muhammad Ali, but they don't realize, he was he kept fighting with a broken jaw.
Yeah.
Jaw was hanging,
When the
and he ain't stopped. Like Kobe Bryant finished the game and he had torn his Achilles. Like, you have to have that type of mentality.
Mama mentality, right?
Right. This was a great conversation, so much so that we had to split it into 2 parts. So check back for part 2.